science fiction, when we talk about science fiction, and how they promote these ideas of elimination, of sacrifice, of social Darwinism, it always operates on a semiotic level. It invokes signs to communicate very specific normative messages, and the science fiction's role as a weapon of semiotic warfare is most effectively demonstrated by September 11th of 2001. And I mean, like one of Phil's teachers, the individual who actually taught Phil and trained Phil in the field of semiotics, has written about this. Professor Elliot Gaines.
Yeah, he was basically Professor Elliot Gaines, who was the one who inspired the article. He makes the use of semiotics as a weapon of psychological warfare. He makes it very evident in his article, and I would recommend that every listener go and check it out. His article entitled, quote, "The Semiotics of Media Images from Independence Day and September 11th, 2001, unquote. Now, in this article, what Gaines does is he identifies the parallels between the narrative characteristics of the sci-fi film Independence Day and the paradigmatic template that the neoconservative-dominated administration imposed upon 9/11. Now, in a little caveat, I'd like to add that Professor Gaines is not a conspiracy theorist. He received his Ph.D. in mass communication in 1995 from Ohio University with emphasis in critical and cultural studies, media criticism, semiotics, and media production. His research basically explores identity, communication, culture, and semiotic theory. He's anything but a conspiracy theorist. In fact, again, he was one of my instructors in college and the one responsible for introducing me to the field of semiotics. His politics are decidedly left-wing, a little left of center, and I'm at variance with a few of his views. However, he's an extremely intelligent man whom I admire a great deal. But at any rate, Professor Gaines analyzes the now famous clip from Independence Day, where a hovering alien ship destroys the White House with this powerful energy beam. And of course, I'm sure you've seen the scene, played ad nauseum now on FX and several other channels. But commenting on that clip, Gaines identifies in what he calls, quote, "the narrative qualities that embody the paradigmatic character of the situation in images," unquote, that surround the events of September 11th. Now, Independence Day is vintage normative fiction because it proffers a clear mandate for the abolition of the nation-state system and the establishment of a global government. And to legitimize its normative contentions, what Independence Day does is it does precisely what we've been talking about in the title of this series. It invokes the beyond. It invokes powers beyond man. In the film, man is confronted by a force, in this case extraterrestrials, that dwarfs him both epistemologically and ontologically, and man's ontological and epistemological shortcomings give rise to a crisis of politics. Suddenly, the present nation-state system of global politics is caricatured as hopelessly inadequate because of its supposed inability to deal with an alien threat. So now, because the world is being threatened, we get together to sing "We Are the World" holding hand in hand, and let's go kill the aliens. Now, Independence Day was, of course, promoted vigorously by establishment media organs. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that even President Clinton, Bill Clinton, whose globalism was his globalist politics were certainly more overt than many presidents in the past. He commented on Independence Day, saying that we could all learn a lesson from the film and that it was a very important film. But what the film did was it basically started to plant those little seeds, those little ideational spores within the public psyche, so that by the time of the WTC attacks, the collective subconscious of America was ready and just ripe to be introduced to a new globalist agenda, and the mimetic fertility that Independence Day helped to embed within the public psyche is very effectively demonstrated by the comments of MSNBC reporter Ron Insania.
Yep.
Now, Ron Insania, basically, he saw the World Trade Center fall to pieces firsthand.
So he says, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And in an interview with Katie Couric and Matt Lauer and Tom Brokaw, Insania recounted his experience, and I'll just quote him verbatim. He says, quote, "We were cutting across a quarantine zone, actually. The building began to disintegrate, and we looked up and started to see elements of the building come down, and we ran, and honestly, it was like a scene out of Independence Day. Everything began to rain down. It was pitch black around us as the wind was ripping through the corridors of lower Manhattan," unquote. Now, what Insania did there was he made an intertextual reference. And what an intertextual reference is, of course, I mentioned texts before. Texts are basically the message that signs convey. An intertextual reference creates a correlation between more than one text, thus augmenting a sign's meaning. So what he basically does, what he was basically doing there was creating a relationship between the text of 9/11, of the WTC attacks, and the text of Independence Day. Now, what Gaines does in his articles, he identifies this Independence Day reference as particularly significant because Insania, being a journalist before a global audience, is very much aware of the fact that his reference to Independence Day is understood as a commonly known cultural text. It's commonly known now because Independence Day was marketed worldwide and shown on movie screens across the globe. Well, at that point, those previously